Hello, everybody, and thank you guys for joining us. I am Noah Rosenblatt. That is John Walkup. We are talking Manhattan today, and we got a good one. We got Daniel Gershburg. Our friend Daniel has been an attorney in this business for 18 plus years. He's at KGMD for 4 years, right? At
Four
KGMD?
years. 4 years, July.
And you're starting to do a lot more business. It's growing. It's great. You join us every once in a while. You have some great thoughts on the market. So we're going to get right to it. We're not going to waste any time. I got my questions. I'm going to send my first question right out to you. Start this thing up. Daniel, I need to know what's happening from your desk, legal wise. What is the state of the New York City marketplace?
The state of the market is it's better than last year, thank goodness, but it's ebbing and flowing. So we every single week collect every data point that comes across our desk, every single contract. If it's a co-op, if it's a condo, what the broker's commission is, whether it's all cash, etc. And when you compare, so I just ran a random comparison of July of 2023 through the end of November to this year, our volume is up close to 20%. So we're 18.5 or so percent higher this year than we were in 2023. The interesting part about that, though, is when you dig in, some months were essentially flat from last year. And in other months, we had an increase of 40 to 50% in terms of the files that came in on a weekly basis, which tracks what, when I talk to brokers that I work with, I'm like, what do you see? What do you see? They have the same reaction of like 1 week it's dead and the next week it's just bananas. The other data point that we found that I thought was really interesting is that not much has really changed. So the number of people that are all cash, essentially the same, little blips here and there, depending on whether it's a co-op or a condo. The type of transaction, whether it's a townhouse or a condo, et cetera, is essentially the same across boroughs. So we track Brooklyn, we track Manhattan. All the data sets are the same. The only difference really is that less deals have died than they did last year for whatever reason. So we track that as well, the first deal versus the second deal. And our average price is significantly higher this year than it was last year. I can attribute that perhaps to noise, right? We've done some pretty large size deals in the past 6 months or so. And so maybe that changes the numbers, and I'm not smart enough to do the median thing that you guys do with Excel. So it may sort of change things up. But for the most part, it feels like a better market. It does not feel like a fantastic market because there's not much consistency in terms of what we're seeing. 1 month maybe here, the next month maybe there, and then back down. But it's definitely better than it was.
Interesting. So, one of the things we've heard about is that timeline on due diligence. And I was wondering if you could speak to that. And I also wanted to follow up, and I'm not sure if this is connected to the previous point you made about the less deals are dying. And I'm curious if you could just talk about that as well.
Yeah, I think so. I'll take the second point first. There's more confidence in our buyers this year than there was last year. Last year, when I'm doing intake calls, I'm always talking to them, and you can feel and sense that trepidation of, do they go in? Because there's this like, well, will interest rates fall? This constant conversation about the rates, right? Do I do this deal? Do I just wait it out? I'm uncertain. There's less of that here, and there's consistently been less of that throughout the year. I think buyers, when they've identified a property, or sellers, when they intended to sell, maybe got their price, or maybe were used to the fact that in 2023, they weren't getting the price that they thought that they were going to get. And so they're fine now in this market. But you do see more of an inertia to actually sign the transactions than you did, where it was like just like pulling teeth every single deal. You don't really have that as much this year. And in terms of due diligence, it's that line from 0 to dark 30, like no one's coming to save us. Like this is it. Like we are the team that's going to do anything. There has been no meaningful change in terms of due diligence getting faster. There never will be. And I think, at least, because the market doesn't make sense for the way it's handled right now. This is a prime use of AI. And I don't know that much about AI because I'm just getting older and I just like to read and I don't follow tech as much when it comes to these things. But you have this living, breathing building, and it just spits out these data points. And all we're asking for are these data points in real time. And if we got them in real time, we would cut down, I kid you not, the time it takes to sign the contract by probably 80%. Just deals with just constant.
What is that time now? Is it 2 weeks or so still, 2 to 3 weeks?
Yeah, it depends. It could be 1 week if someone's in a good mood and they decide to answer our questionnaire. It could be 2 weeks. So we have a database of over 4,000 buildings. Some of our colleagues do as well as law firms. We save that data. So if you say, look, I'm buying in 387 at Delphi in Brooklyn, I can look at my CRM and say, okay, we've done the deal here 2 months ago. We're in the good space. However, if we haven't done the deal, or if we did a deal 9 months ago, we still have to go back to the building and go, hey, what's up with reserves now? What's up with local law 11? So there's just nothing that's really going to accelerate the process outside of an outside actor going, I can do this much better.
Is there a centrally shared attorney database of this stuff? Are there other attorneys that have done deals recently that have those updated questionnaires and they're sharing this stuff?
We're not sharing it with, I would love to. I mean, I think most attorneys would honestly love to. I think there's less competition than people talk about. And I think it'd be a great idea. It's just that to actually put it in a specific system is really, really difficult. And then who shares the liability for that? So let's say someone's, going to my questionnaire and they want to see what the numbers are in reserves, and the managing agent messes up and another law firm uses that information. Who's liable there? So you can't really make it work. And that's a really big problem. I think the solution really to this is technology. And until that happens, this is it. So we've had deals that it's taken 3.5 weeks to get due diligence, and there's just nothing you can do.
Interesting. So just to follow up, so it sounds like deals are not failing because buyers want them to succeed, and it's not necessarily a diligence thing. So I think there was a lot of talk a year ago how local law 97, some of these local laws were just a black box. Like, we don't know what these expenses are going to be in a year. Is that less of a case now? So the due diligence is essentially just a timeline issue and not necessarily a deal failing issue. Is that a fair point?
That's correct. I mean, other than, huge local law 11 work, which I would classify as one of the 4 horsemen of killing a deal, if there's local law 11 work, that's the worst thing is, hey, we're planning to do this local law 11 stuff in 3 months. We haven't budgeted yet, but we think it could be 1 million to 2 million. That'll spook someone. Outside of that, I really have conversations with clients that I probably would not have had. I'm less scared than I was 4 years ago or 5 years ago. So I'll say, look, you're buying this place for 3.5 million. Yep, maybe local law 11 happens. Maybe it costs $1 million for the building. This means an additional $4,000 for you. Do you like this enough for an additional $4,000? Versus what we typically find, which is a lot of caution, like, hey, your call, we don't know. And that puts someone on their back foot. I'm finding less buyers that are just saying no as a result of these things. I mean, the no that you'll get, just to be perfectly clear, is if they're financing and you have a really big local law 11 issue and the bank says, we're not gonna lend here. Then that puts the brakes on, they get spooked. That's more the exception rather than the rule. It doesn't happen as much. So we're seeing buyers moving forward.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Daniel, really quick, foreign investors, are they coming back or are they not coming back?
I think they're going to. I mean, I just I think about this in a very theoretical way of, where is it safe in the world right now to invest money? And no matter what you think of this most recent election and what's going on, you have to compare what's happening here to the rest of the world, right? And when you zoom out in that way, there's just no better way to invest funds, a safer way, I should say, than investing in the US. And one of the top ways to do that, obviously, is through real estate, right? If they don't want to go through the stock market or something else, they're going to go into real estate, or as a complementary way to invest. So I think foreign investing will be back. I think once the Russia-Ukraine war is settled in some way, you may find people in Eastern European countries starting to move their money here. They can't really because of sanctions and all the things that are happening. But I think even if you have a crazier world where you have more hotspots, there is still more impetus to then invest in the US, specifically in New York, because again, there's not a lot of safety in a lot of these places. And I think the US has shown through COVID to now that our economy just keeps chugging along, where every single person said, by this time, something's going to fall. And it hasn't. And so I think that's why I'm very bullish on foreign investors coming in.
Yeah. And where's all this money coming from?
So the cash that we're getting right now, I mean, I would say half of our deals are still cash, which is absolutely absurd. It was a much higher percentage last year. This is generational wealth. These are baby boomers that are retiring, and they've done very, very well for themselves. And they're helping their mostly adult children purchase real estate. So my clients veer to 35 and 40 years old, they're buying for $4 to $5 to $6 million. And a lot of that money is coming from parents that are, giving that money to their kids to purchase in some way, whether as co-owners or anything else. You really have this, and it really surprised me, this huge generational transfer of wealth that I think continues for a very long period of time. So it's really just mom and dad, or mom and mom, and dad are giving funds to their kids to buy real estate, to start them up. I mean, $3 million is a nice startup for somebody, but it's really to get them rolling within life.
Right. I just want to go back. So you mentioned the you have some individuals who have sanctions. They may invest if there's ever some settlement there. And it reminded me of the upcoming beneficial owner information that's going to be required by, I think it's OFAC. I'm not quite sure when you got to submit that. It's the end of the year. Do you see any headwinds from that? Because I know a lot of the co-op condo board members are going to have to send their information in, and the fines are apparently really, really stiff. And I'm just curious if you start to see any concern there.
This is the biggest piece of hot potato I've seen in the past 10 years. And there's been very little guidance on what to do and who is ultimately responsible for filing the forms that need to be filed. We're proactively getting in touch with our clients. And now, to be candid, like, we don't want to form LLCs anymore for the most part. We don't want to be involved in that. Sometimes clients will ask us to do that, and we'll do it. But on the front side, we say, look, there's all these regulations that are in place. To the extent you have a tax lawyer, to the extent you have an accountant, make sure that they're aware of this, make sure that they're filing it. I don't know how this is going to go down because it's so vast and big, and no one is saying you, person, are the one that has to file this. I think you're going to find that if this goes into effect in the way it will, people will be receiving penalties starting next year, and then they'll be held to pay. And then, like anything else, people will figure it out. I do think that there's litigation going on surrounding this, which is trying to block this in one way or another. I don't know how successful that's going to be. But again, that's just another additional thing that we have to deal with as attorneys or practitioners in terms of setting those client expectations and making sure that, we're doing everything correctly, which is really tough sometimes.
Right. And now speaking of setting expectations and sort of, managing the process, I'm curious, and this is a total 90-degree turn here. What are some of the signs that you're losing a deal?
That's a great question. Usually, it's one of those things where you just feel it, right? Like, like if you've been a broker for even a short period of time, you start seeing the drip in communications where you'd be getting text left and right, like, where is this? Why isn't it signed? You're not getting that feedback back from that other side. And that's the first clue of like, oh, someone won't confirm wire instructions. That's kind of weird. Or, I asked for changes in the contract, but they're not getting back to me. That's weird. One of the benefits in having relationships, attorney to attorney, is, and, respecting our colleagues and hopefully them respecting us in the same way, is we could just call them and they don't have to tell us. But if they're silent on the phone, we get it. We know what's going on. There may be a second contract out. The seller may be having cold feet. The buyer may be getting cold feet. And it doesn't happen often, but there's a camaraderie, and hopefully in the brokerage community as well, though that community is much bigger, so you don't know. There's a camaraderie where you already know, and then you get a confirmation, and you're honest with the client. Like, hey, look, this is taking too long, and, the sellers may not do this, or there may actually be a second contract that's out, that's all cash. So it's more of a feeling than anything else. Doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen. And many times outside of that person's control. You were just touching upon due diligence. If due diligence is taking 2.5 weeks, that's 2.5 weeks that the buyer's thinking about whether or not they want to live in Chelsea or the Upper West Side, or how the schools are, or whatever it is. That ain't good. I mean, like, that's why when you walk into a car dealership, they don't really let you out, because if you go home, that's
casino too.
Yeah, casino too. I don't know about that. I've never been.
They pump that oxygen in there. It's like an oxygen chamber in those places. I love it. I go there for oxygen treatment. That's what I go to the casinos for. Time and radio silence, right? Time and radio silence are the two biggest signs. Time is a deal killer. Ugh.
Yeah, it really is.
That was just, and then that silence was just irritating me. It's like, you were talking to me before. Why'd you stop talking to me?
This is exactly how, girlfriends would break up with me. It's this slow death. I'd be like, I don't understand. And there was just no response for 2 days. Like, and then hey.
So I think all of us have these shared experiences, and we're not going to talk about that now.
No.
All right. I want to go to another question here, and then at some point I want to open this up, and I want to get your questions. Guys, again, if you have questions, please put them right in that chat. Just keep putting them there. If you don't have any questions, we're going to let Daniel go. Otherwise, we'll answer your questions. But Daniel, before we get to that, are there any like industry-wide challenges that are going on today that may not have been going on before that, are happening right now that maybe some of the agents here can become aware of and try to stay ahead of?
So I wouldn't say challenges industry-wide, but if you guys are okay with it, I would love to sort of talk about what an agent can do to get, it sounds kind of salesy, but it's not, to get something signed or set themselves apart based on what we see from the diligence standpoint, if that's okay. So
Yeah.
I think the challenges we find very often are these really easy fixes that just aren't handled. So, we'll get a co-op purchase and we'll be on the buyer side, but we won't get an offering plan, or we won't get amendments, or we won't get financials from the listing side. And we'll have to pull those things. Or the listing side will say, look, you got to request that from the building. They won't be aware of it. If agents hone in on getting every single bit of material they possibly can, I can essentially guarantee that more times than not, a deal will get signed and it will get signed quicker. So to give you an example, on every single transaction, whether we're on the seller side or the buyer side, we run a permit search. And quite often now, when we represent purchasers in townhouses, once the deal sheet comes in, I'm rushing a title report before the contract's signed. I want every bit of information that I can possibly get to deal with any issues that are there. And the brokers that I've worked with that do that unequivocally do way better than those that do not. And that could be a byproduct of less volume. That could be the way that they operate, but it's just a fact, right? So if you're a broker and you get a listing, I would get the offering plan, I would get the amendments. I pay for a permit search, and I'm happy to walk you through how you don't even need to pay for a permit search. You could do it online. If it's a condo, I would sometimes, or a townhouse, I proactively order a title report. There's like 4,000 title companies that are dying to work with brokers, and they'll run these searches for you essentially free of charge, just because they want to start working with you in some way. Once you have that, you eliminate the drip, drip, drip of bad news, and you can proactively deal with a permit. We just had a deal where our client had a permit from 1984. She's on the sell side. Had the buyer waited, let's say, we were on the sell side when we ran that. Had the buyer waited to run the permit search until after the contract, we would have had a really big problem closing. It's there, right? And we go, it's there.
It was an open permit from 1984?
Yes, for electric, right? She's 84 years old. This woman had no idea she didn't live there. But a 20-minute conversation where we told the other side, look, we pulled this permit, we have it. This is the expediter that's working on it. It's going to take 3 weeks to close out. I'm going to put it in the contract or in the side letter, whatever it is. Make sure it's taken care of. Done. No nightmares, no anything else. And this sounds like we're doing something fancy. We're not. We're doing, I would say, the minimal amount that you should do on a particular file. I think we lose that sometimes when we get caught up in the marketing of things and in, meeting people and doing all this stuff. Like that work, that grunt work, pays off so much when you can effectively tell someone what the problem is, how you're going to fix it, what it's going to cost, and how to come out the other side. And in every instance of doing that, deals get signed, deals close.
So this is just like a checklist thing almost. Just do step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4 kind of thing.
Yeah, and they're really basic sort of checklists. And I know it's difficult because sometimes brokers aren't trained in how to pull permits. I get that, or like what to look for in the title policy. Work with an attorney. Doesn't have to be me. I don't care who you work with. If you love who you work with, just after this call, go, hey, this is what I want to do on my listings. How do I effectuate this, right? And you bring this to the client, and the client understands and appreciates it, et cetera, and you get these things done. I think the challenge will be with, volume, let's say, comes back or it stays the same, is how are you practicing? Like, how are you setting yourself apart as a practitioner, whether that's a broker or an attorney? And so people always talk about getting deals signed and getting deals done. This is the number one most effective way of doing that, is doing the work ahead of time to deal with these things. And so again, I wouldn't say it's a challenge per se, but I think it's a challenge for us because so few people are doing this on a day-to-day, and it's just so effective that I wish more would.
Yeah, that's really good. A lot of agents kind of like once they get that contract signed, they're like, "Hey, pass the torch, leave me alone, let me go on to the next one." They kind of stop right there. I see what you're
That's it.
saying. It's like you got to the 2 yard line, punch that shit in.
Punch it through. Just literally punch it through.
Yeah,
Like you're armed with this. There's no, I can't come back and say I'm waiting for this, right? So a lot of this is like, oh, I'm waiting for this, I'm waiting for that, and then the seller side punts it back. If you
yeah,
got your homework done, there's no excuse, right? Either you're signing this thing or you're not signing the thing.
Yeah.
very cool.
Yeah.
All right, I think we're gonna move to the Q&A part of this. John, is that okay? Q&A time?
Yeah. Want me to read off the questions?
Yes, go ahead with the questions. And if anyone wants to raise their hand, check if you have your hand raised. Raise your hand. I will let you talk. Otherwise, we'll go right to the questions.
Yeah. And remember, Daniel doesn't get paid unless you win.
I do get paid. I do get
Okay,
paid. You guys said
Leora, hang on 1 second. I'm gonna have John do one question, then we're gonna let Leora talk.
All
Go
right,
ahead.
here we go. I'm just going to read these as they are. I had a deal where the questionnaire said no work is upcoming, and the minutes mentioned nothing about Local Law 11. 1 month later, and a week after close, they announced Local Law 11 work. Who is liable if info is lost between a board and management?
doesn't matter because no one's going to sue. So we go through this all the time, and quite often we have this because you have human beings that are put in a position where they have to answer these questionnaires in mass, right? They're going to make mistakes, and we've actually seen the frequency of mistakes increase. So theoretically, there's really no privity between the managing agent and the buyer. There's privity, meaning contractual obligation between the managing agent and the current owner. Who sues the managing agent? I don't know. Maybe the buyer, maybe the seller. Who's going to pay the lawyer a $20,000 retainer just to get the thing in court, right? In what percentage of cases are you going to find damage that exceeds like $50,000 or $60,000 where you're going to say, I'm going to sue this building? And now you're going to have an active lawsuit against the building, which is going to make it more difficult for you to sell the thing if you want to sell the thing. It just
Interesting.
stinks, and it happens, unfortunately.
Wow.
That's my legal answer for you.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Moving
Cool.
on.
Litigators
John,
will
yeah,
disagree.
rapid fire.
Litigators will disagree. They will say, absolutely,
Right.
we can sue. God bless.
Well, I mean, in many ways, that is good advice, which is just like, I mean, you have to grin and bear it, right? It's just, it doesn't make sense to follow this up. It just sucks. And that's sucks to suck,
Yeah.
as the kids like to say.
It's
All
very
right.
thing.
Moving on, can you provide your observations on recent activity in the Brooklyn townhouse market, renovated versus unrenovated, et cetera, permit issues, delays? Any
Yeah,
insight?
that's a wonderful question. So I'm happy to, if you want to reach out after this, I'm happy to give you granular data that we have specifically on townhouses. I do a lot of Brooklyn work. What I don't do nearly as often as I did 2 years ago are the fix and flips, or even 3 years ago, which was like, I lived in Bed-Stuy for a period of time, and I lived in Williamsburg. Who would have thought by looking at me that I lived in Williamsburg? But I had a lot of these transactions, and a lot of it was, we haven't pulled any permits whatsoever, but it's a brand spanking new house. And you know what? The buyers didn't care. And I would tell the buyers, like, this is not okay. But the price was so much of a discount versus what was there. That was just what they could afford. I'm seeing way less of those. I don't know if it's because the brokers that market those, I'm not really working with as much, but I can tell you those would come across my desk 2 or 3 times a week, if not more, depending on the cycle. I'm not seeing a lot of that. I am, I'm doing a lot of townhouses where it's a finished product and it's selling for significantly more. And on those, it's just a different ballgame. There's no question that permits are going to be closed, right? There's no question that if there are open permits, those are going to be closed out by the time of closing, if not proactively before, whether it's a flip or not, because those deal sizes are much higher and the expectations of the buyer are way, way different in terms of risk. Those have accelerated a little bit. The other ones have, at least for me, kind of vanished. Part of it is because rates are higher. So the people that were involved in buying these townhouses and flipping them aren't able to really get the end buyer at the end price that they want. So sometimes the financials don't make sense for them. In a zero interest rate environment, the coupon rate, that makes perfect sense. They made perfect sense from like, I don't know, 08 to 21, because they were just making money from it. Not so much when money's not as cheap.
Interesting. I want to follow up and just to kind of tweak the question a little bit.
Yeah.
And I remember several years ago, Noah and I were talking to a broker who did a lot of work in the new dev side. And one of the things he talked about was that on the Manhattan side, obviously the projects are larger, they're much more expensive. You're dealing with, big guys like, Exdel, Naftali, who really put a lot of effort into the project, and it shows in the final product. Brooklyn's, you might have to watch out for some of these, Bed-Stuy, Williamsburg, farther flung new developments in which it looks great from the outside, but there might be something under the covers hidden. And I wonder if you could kind of touch on that briefly.
Yes, you're absolutely correct.
Okay.
No, I would say I mean, there's reputation behind the Manhattan ones. And so something sells because it's related, right? So you see that name. I mean, it's almost akin, I kid you not, to like American Express or some other, or Berkshire Hathaway, where there's this inherent trust that's in the name. Warren Buffett has inherent trust to his name, and related, and perhaps Extel as well, and Naphtali have that trust that's there. The smaller condos in Brooklyn, the smaller new developments, are builders that have sort of come together to do these things. They are less interested anecdotally in terms of reputation and more in terms of scale and volume. It is one thing to build a 400-unit building, is another thing to build 10 40-unit buildings or 40 10-unit buildings, as happened in Brooklyn. And you just need to move on to the next one. It's a conversation I always have with my clients when they buy new dev, specifically in Brooklyn, carving out a few sort of larger buildings. There's a lot of trust here. I cannot kick the tires on this thing. You can't really you can do an inspection, but you're not going to find much. But I will tell you, buyers keep buying, because Brooklyn is, as we all know, is its own ecosystem. And the people that are buying in Brooklyn, right, those new devs, the 10-unit, they don't want, it's not that they can't live in it, they don't want to live in Manhattan. It's just a very different sort of idea for them of where to live and how to live. And if they can barely afford to move into this neighborhood because they got to, move into this new construction that may be shoddy, they'll do it because they figure in 4 or 5 years they're going to move anyway. So it hasn't really slowed things down, at least from what I'm seeing.
Interesting. All right. So going back to the questions, this is more of a comment. Permits and open UCC3s have derailed deals. I think
Yes.
we agree on that.
I think we all
next,
agree.
Please send your info. So we'll definitely put the info in this. I mean, you can, do you want to just say what your email is so people can, email you?
Yeah, sure. It's daniel@kgm.law. But I'm obviously happy to send you guys everything.
I'm going to go ahead and put this in the chat, guys, so that.
And the follow-up is, do you have an expediter you typically work with?
I do. They're wonderful. Email me. I don't know if any expediters are on this call and they're going to get pissed, but they're wonderful. Feel free to reach out to me and I'll put you in touch with them.
Right. Someone writes, I'm putting Daniel at the top of my referral list. So Daniel, I don't know if that was you writing in.
It's my mother. That's my mother, and I appreciate her being on the call.
Nice to
She was
see you, Gershburg. Thank you.
74 years old in Miami, and she still does this. She still loves her kid. And I love her for it. Love you, Mom. Thank you.
All right. What about the mayor and the city of Yes? That's the question. Any comments?
The mayor is currently under indictment, and the city of Yes has to go through the city council, which is not a city council of Yes. I don't think, I mean, like, look at congestion. What are we talking about? I mean, I hope, of course, we all hope that it's clear we need more housing. It's abundantly clear. And there's plenty of people that want to build this housing, but it's just not going to I don't think it's going to get done in this environment or any environment close to it. You don't have anyone, like, this guy's essentially a lame duck, right? And no one's going to be pressured by him to do anything right now. And you're going to have this cast of characters that are going to come out. Some of them are going to say, we're building way too much. And the others are going to say, we have to build more and more. Once you have some sort of political power, that's how you get things across the finish line. We are nowhere near that level. We are at the opposite end of that level. So, I'm on the city of Yes. If it happens, great.
Tend to agree. Okay. Do you practice check sightline and view protection, or does the buyer have to request an extra check?
Do you mean, so if you mean sightline, the product that TitleVest has, I don't know if that's the one where you can see what's being built up next to the actual place that you're building. The answer is yes. Quite often so I have a very, very, very long intake email that I send to prospective clients and clients that sign up, which says, here are your risks. This is what we're going to do about it. Here are the things you can do. And one of those line items is, if you want to know whether or not you have lot line windows or whether someone's going to build something next door, there's this awesome product that is able to give you a really good bird's eye view into that. You find that those are purchased on properties that are selling for above 3 million, sub 3 million. For whatever reason, no one's investing it. I think the fee is somewhere around $750 or $500. There's been, and it depends on the number of plots that you're searching. There's never been pushback on large deals. I then follow up as well and say, look, you're buying in this, whatever story building, your window's facing here and there's an empty lot, you may want to do this. And most oftentimes they do it, and it makes perfect sense to do.
Got it. Okay, this is the last one we have in the Q&A. It says, can you talk about any problems for brokers that have come up with the new sales commissions regulations?
I have not seen one so far. Again, a lot of these things between the PCDA and these lawsuits and everything else, I believe in redundancy. My firm believes in redundancy. So we take the deal sheet, we send the deal sheet to our side, we ask them to confirm the deal sheet. If the deal sheet doesn't explicitly state who's paying what commission to whom, we follow up with the other side. And in the contract, we just have language that says, unless otherwise indicated, the seller shall pay the broker's commission for the seller's broker and the buyer's broker. Again, if you have this like baseline clarity, things get way easy. If you don't, that's when you're at the closing and someone's like, and that's a really weird place to be. So I think I haven't seen a single issue surrounding that, to be honest with you. I think with a little bit of, work ahead of time, just like anything else, you won't have issues with it. So I don't think it'll be a huge deal.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That was great. Great questions. Leora, I got a user right here. I'm going to let you talk. You are there. If you could unmute yourself, please.
Hi, sorry. Only because I could not type in the chat. So you said something about fines or something of the sort about 15, 20 minutes ago. I kind of missed that. Can you just elaborate what it's about?
Fines?
Something about there's going to be like, you were talking about something and I missed the line that you were saying. So I was kind of confused.
Oh, I think you were referring to potential fines for when you form an LLC. The government now needs to know the beneficial owner information of who actually owns the end LLC. So essentially, privacy is gone.
Right. Right. Is that for all, even sub 3 million? Because I think that was
it's just
something
for
that was
LLC. Yeah. It doesn't matter. When you form an LLC, that they need to know who actually is a beneficial owner. So the price has nothing to sort of do with it.
Yep. Okay. Cool. And on a side note, Williamsburg is getting a flagship Hermes, FYI. So
finally,
cool.
It's just not the same Williamsburg as 5 years ago. So
yeah,
definitely.
Okay.
Daniel still
Thank you.
From 1984 from his place in Williamsburg. So gonna have to close that, Daniel.
I miss it though. I still miss it.
Cool. Thank you so much, Leora. I'm going to disable you now. I got one more question here. Christina, you should be on. And if you unmute yourself, please speak away.
Hi, Daniel. I'm Christina. Thanks so much for everything that you shared. I just wanted to ask, so I'm really curious about like as a real estate agent, like how to find out more about real estate policies that affect real estate and like how to find more information about that. Like if you could just touch a little bit about that. There was another one of these talks that we did a few weeks ago, the bull market and in New York City, and it really touched on laws that affect real estate. And if you could just kind of like what's the best way for a real estate agent to go about like learning and being more educated about this?
It's such a wonderful question. I don't really have the answer for you because that's not the space where I live. But I think, your brokerage, the manager of your brokerage, like if you came up and said, look, I want to learn everything there is to know about the regulations that surround my industry and what I do. And some of you may be rolling your eyes because some managers or whatever, but I think many managers would love that. And they would be happy to help out and, even put you in touch with their legal departments or give you the materials that you need to learn. I think thematically speaking, it may sound corny and cheesy, but the more you know in this industry, in the long term, the better off you are because very few, I don't say very few, but there's people that don't have the curiosity surrounding those regulations. And whenever I deal with brokers that do and that know their stuff in and out, it's a pleasure, like just to know your stuff. So I feel you, I understand where you're coming from. I wish I had a better answer other than going to your manager at your brokerage and saying, look, I want to learn as much as there is, like at least point me in the right direction. I think they can hopefully get you there. If not, reach out to me and I'm happy to give you whatever resources I have too.
Yeah, I was going to say, we try to bring on experts. I mean, we had Jared for the bull case here. So Christina, thank you for joining these forums that we have. But it's funny, we only really talk about the in the news regulations, right? The local law 97 or other stuff. Like I have no idea what list there might be out there of all the regulatory laws or even with developers. That's a good point. Like, is there one place that shows all of the things and what all of those local laws are, or
Well,
didn't even think
someone
about
wrote into the Q&A saying that REBNY provides a ton of info in and around regulations, and
Right.
I think I second
Good.
that. REBNY has a wealth of information, so I suggest you
Excellent.
go to REBNY site, log in, and you have access to all kinds of fun stuff. I'd actually like to switch back to some of the Q&A because we have some more questions coming in.
Sure. Thank you, Christina.
Yeah, thank you, Christina. Daniel, have you had to deal with the new property report for townhouses? I
Yes.
guess the property condition disclosure form, whatever that one
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, it's entirely useless so far in its present incarnation. So, who would have thought?
Completely.
So, the new PCDA form is essentially a form that sellers have to put out there when they're selling a townhouse that will give you what most other states have, which is a bird's eye view into the condition of the property itself, right? They have to represent whether or not there's been any structural damage, any leaks, any flooding that took place, if they're in a flood zone. And I do a fair number of townhouses. And so far, I have not had a single one where there's been like a yes that's been checked off. It's to the best of the seller's knowledge. There's been language from attorneys that says we're still going to try and waive it, and we've had to strike that out. So it hasn't, at least for me and my colleagues, I don't know of anyone that has been negatively affected by this or a deal that's died as a result of this, because most sellers don't know themselves, right? When it comes to a lot of these things. And it really hasn't had the oomph that a lot of people thought it was going to have or supply the information. It's the same thing. It's the reps that are in the contracts about no leaks, heating, plumbing, electric, air conditioning, no flooding, and also getting an inspection done on townhouses, a really good inspection. That's what's going to help you, because even if there was something that happened 6 years ago, it doesn't speak to the condition of the property now. So it hasn't affected a single deal that I've worked on since it's come out. It's been annoying in the sense that sometimes they don't know to send it, and so we have to remind them, and sometimes they'll say, can you review this with me? But beyond that, it hasn't really done anything.
Interesting. All right. Do you have any advice do you have any advice for information on deal summaries that are helpful and are not often included?
What do you mean by that? Like, what do you mean by
Like
deal summaries?
Like a deal sheet?
I guess a deal sheet, perhaps. That's a good idea.
Yeah, I think you should fill it out. And I say that, I say that sincerely. Like, I can't tell you the number of deal sheets that we still receive that are missing the maintenance amount, the number of shares, what the inclusions are, whether a gas fireplace is working, and this may be minutia, but we're in the business of arguing at a closing or over a $50 stove burner that's not working on an $8 million deal. So these tiny things, again, affect whether or not this thing happens. That's why we have this. It's an automatic thing. When the deal sheet comes in, we send the summary to our client and to the broker and say, can you confirm that this is accurate? Many times the brokers on the other side won't get a deal sheet from the listing agent for whatever. I don't know how it works, but for whatever reason, they won't receive it. And so we have to go back and say, hey, is this actually accurate? If you mean deal summaries in terms of the transactions that are going on, we send this to brokers all the time. I'm happy to, if you have particular sort of questions about deal sizes in a particular area or whatever it is, I'm happy to send that or happy to help. But if it's the deal sheet itself, deal summary, then, it really has to, you have to spend the time to make sure that it's actually accurate, because it just is mistaken quite often.
Gotcha. A couple more here.
Yep.
Where do you go, Daniel, to find increases on taxes if 421A is expiring in a few years? For example, and the listing team has no info.
There's an email. So they used to have a website. New York City used to have a website, which is probably free to run because it's New York City, that would tell you 421As and when they expire. And they were like, what we should do? We should shut down this website. And they did. And that was fun because we earned flat fees. So then we had to figure out how to get this information to not be sued. And so there's an actual email address. I'm happy to share it with you guys, and you can disseminate it. It's like 428 something. I'll find out what it is. And we literally email this email and we say, this is the building. When does the abatement expire? And they let us know when it expires. And then we forward that email over to the client itself. But yeah, I agree with you. This used to be a thing. We would ask managing agents when this expires, and quite often they would say either we don't know or we weren't a managing agent when it started, so we can't tell you when it finishes, which is also supremely helpful.
Yeah.
Okay. If you guys want that, if you guys want that information, you got Daniel's email in the chat right here. Take a copy of it, email Daniel, and you guys make a connection, and then you could send it that way privately. It's a good, because I want you guys to make relationships here.
Yeah, no, definitely. So, okay, we've got one more in the Q&A that I see. So if you have any more, this is like last call here. Daniel, could you please talk about why we're seeing more off-market listings in the current climate? Is this going to continue for the long term?
But you know, I think so, and I don't know. This wasn't a thing 5 years ago or 3 years ago. I think part of it may, and I'm just kind of stretching here, and you guys feel free to jump in, but I think part of it's like, do they want to go live with this thing? If they don't think they're going to be able to get this amount of money, do they want to keep it in pocket? But these days it's not really in pocket. Like it's disseminated somewhat widely, even if it's off market. And so you would always have these deals that were large deals where you'd have privacy concerns. These aren't like $50 million deals anymore. This has come down to 10 million, 8 million, 6 million, sometimes even less, where someone's kicking the tires on the market and seeing if they're going to get something, seeing if they're going to bite. But it's definitely been, you know, an interesting experience for us because it's happening with increasing frequency. Do I think it will continue? I do, because I have no idea what tomorrow will bring, let alone next year. But if rates stay the same, you can make an argument that prices are not going to really move that much over the course of the next year. I'm just way in over my skis when I'm saying this, but if that's the case, then things tend to, you know, stay the same as they were. And so I think that will continue in a way. But I leave it to you guys. I don't know what you guys are seeing.
Well, there's two sides, right? When you say not, there's the broker systems and then there's the portals, right? So what the broker systems have them, but they're not syndicating to the portals. So the brokers see them internally, but not the Zillows and the Street Easies and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's just, it's on the market, but off the market.
Well, someone actually just wrote in to say, well, maybe this is going to continue because Street Easy sends your customers to brokers who will pay for the leads. So I think that's sort of an end run around that. We got another one that snuck in. Daniel, can you please provide a checklist for listing agent of documents to have to help close deals faster? And where can we find the status of open permits?
Yeah, I can put it together. Email me. I've never put one together, so thank you. But I'm happy to put it together, and I'm happy to sort of do like a Loom video where I walk you through how to check permits. If you're super lazy and you don't want to do that, again, you can ask the title company to do it. But the actual checklist itself, I think, is a wonderful idea. And I'm happy to share that with you. Feel free to reach out.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's all I have here.
Great stuff. This has been fun. Guys, thank you so much for asking awesome questions. It really makes it so much easier. Yeah, that was great. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Daniel, for the time. Thank you for sharing this wisdom. Hopefully you get a bunch of people emailing you and maybe you'll do some business with these guys and maybe you'll save a deal or two here or there. That does happen in the attorney world. But for today, thank you for the nuggets of wisdom. I hope everyone on this call is smarter. A little bit smarter than they were before the call. And that's the whole purpose of this. So I say thank you. Thank you to Daniel Gershburg. Johnny, you are awesome. Thank you to Johnny Walkup. I am Noah Rosenblatt. We have been from Urban Digs. This has been Talking Manhattan. Catch you guys next week. Cheers, everybody.